If you like horror stories about demonic encounters, get ready. Tonight, you're going to hear real accounts that mix fear, doubt, and dark presences. Like the story you're about to hear, where a child wakes up to find a faceless man sitting on his mother's bed. But before we begin, make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss any terrifying stories, and tell me in the comments what city or country you're watching from. She always left her door cracked open, just enough for me to see the glow of her bedside lamp. That sliver of light gave me a false sense of safety, like the soft glow could keep whatever was in the dark at bay. I must have been about 8 at the time, living with my mom in an old house on the outskirts of Dijon. The hallways were narrow, the floorboards creaked, and the walls felt like they were hiding secrets. I'd been afraid of the dark for as long as I could remember, and it wasn't just the usual kid stuff. It was real, physical terror, like the dark had eyes. I'd tell my mom there was something watching me from the corner of my room, but she'd always say the same thing. It's just your imagination. And that only made it worse because it wasn't my imagination. I felt it, like something was there, waiting. That night I woke up to the sound of wind slamming against my window. But what really got to me was the silence that followed. A heavy, pressing silence, like it was pushing against my ears. I can't explain it. My room was pitch black because the bulb had burned out the day before, and my mom hadn't replaced it yet. I lay there for a while, staring at the ceiling I could barely see, until I felt that familiar chill creep up the back of my neck. The feeling of being watched. Like something was standing at the foot of my bed. Even though I couldn't see a thing, my heart raced. I sat up slowly, trying not to make a sound, and slipped out of my room toward hers. The door was still cracked open. The lamp cast a dim glow inside her room, and for a second, I felt relief. I tiptoed to the side of her bed, ready to crawl in beside her like I always did. But then I stopped. Someone was sitting there, a motionless silhouette, right at the edge of the bed, facing away from me. I thought about calling for my mom, but something held me back. A cold shiver ran down my spine like some part of me already knew it wasn't her. The figure, or whatever it was bald, pale, too pale, and it didn't move. Just sat there, hands in its lap, staring straight ahead. My chest tightened, like the air had turned thick. Then it turned its head toward me. Slowly. It had no face, no features, no eyes, no nose, no mouth, nothing. Just smooth, white, blank skin, like someone had erased its face with an eraser. I froze. I couldn't scream. I couldn't run. I just stood there, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. When that thing, if you could even call it that, tilted its head slightly to the side, I blacked out. I woke up crying, my mom shaking me, asking what happened. I tried to explain, tried to tell her what I'd seen, but she cut me off, saying it was just a nightmare, that it was because of the movie I'd watched with my cousin the week before, that I needed to stop letting my imagination get the best of me. I was still shaking. My pajamas were soaked with sweat, but nothing I said changed her mind. She stayed with me that night, but only out of pity. The next day, everything went back to normal, like nothing had happened. After that, I couldn't sleep right. I'd pretend to be asleep just so she'd leave me alone, but as soon as the lights went out and she left the room, I'd get up and go to the living room. I'd turn the TV on as low as it would go and sit there on the couch watching whatever was on. Cartoon reruns, infomercials, anything. Any noise was better than the silence of that dark hallway. I'd leave all the lights on, even if it meant getting yelled at the next morning. My body was exhausted, but my mind wouldn't let me rest. The fear took over everything. The nights turned into a cycle of tension. Every time I closed my eyes, I'd see that face, or the lack of one, just standing there, staring at me. I started to feel like it was always nearby, even when I couldn't see it. A dark energy hung in the air, like something bad had gotten stuck in that house. It didn't feel like a nightmare. It was more like a supernatural experience, leaving scars on the inside, even if no one could see them. My mom thought it was a phase, that I'd grow out of it. But I knew better. I knew something had been awakened that night. Something that wasn't supposed to be seen. Something that didn't want to be forgotten. and just when I thought it was over, it came back. The second time was worse because this time, I knew what I was seeing. And still, my body locked up just the same. I'd been sleeping on the couch like I had most nights since then. The TV was still on, playing some old show I wasn't even paying attention to. I left the kitchen light on so I wouldn't have to cross the house in the dark if I needed to use the bathroom. Everything was too quiet. Then I woke up suddenly. That same feeling of being watched creeping over me. That same pressure in the air. That same chill on my neck. I opened my eyes slowly, and for a moment I thought I was alone. But then I saw a shadow in the hallway. I held my breath, trying not to move. The shadow crept closer to the living room door and stepped inside. It was there, sitting at the edge of the couch, my couch where I'd curled up. The same pale, motionless body. The same blank face. Its skin was chalk white, reflecting the faint glow of the TV. But this time I could see it better. Its body was wrong. Its neck was too long, its arms were too long, it didn't breathe, didn't blink, didn't move. Just stared at me with that empty space where its eyes should have been. I could feel its presence pressing down on the whole room, like the house itself was holding its breath with me. This time, I managed to move. In a panic, I bolted off the couch and ran down the hall, screaming. I burst into my mom's room and dove onto her bed. She woke up startled, asking what was wrong. I pointed toward the living room, crying, shaking, trying to explain. She got up fast and went to check, turned on the lights, looked around. Nothing. It was gone, like it had never been there, like I was losing it. My mom was furious. She said I was going too far, that it was just another nightmare, that I was making things up because I couldn't face my fears. She tried to make me sleep in my own room that night, but I refused. I ended up on the floor of her room, hugging a pillow over my head to block out the sounds. After that, I begged to live with my dad. He had a small apartment in Paris, but anywhere was better than that house. I knew that thing would come back. I could feel it. My dad didn't want to get involved at first. He said it was all in my head, that kids make things up. But after I kept insisting, he finally agreed. A few weeks later, I moved out. I said goodbye to my school, to the few friends I had, and left it all behind. For a long time, I avoided talking about it. I didn't even tell my therapist. I was afraid of sounding crazy, afraid that if I said it out loud, I'd call it back. I started to think maybe my mom was right. Maybe it had been my imagination, a trauma, a tired mind playing tricks. I tried to convince myself of that, or at least, I tried to. Until years later, when I was a teenager, something happened that brought it all back. My dad had another kid with his new wife, a little boy named Lucas. He was about 7 when he mentioned to me, totally casual, that he thought someone was living in his closet. My blood ran cold. I asked what he meant. He said, "It's a white man. Really white. He doesn't have a mouth or eyes, but he just watches me from in there." The way he said it, so matter-of-fact, like it was normal. It terrified me. It couldn't be. It was a different house, a different city, years later. But it was him. The same man. The same description. The same faceless void. I was stunned. The only thing I could do was grab my brother's arm and ask if he'd told anyone. He said no, that he thought it was a secret because the man never let him talk about it. Said that when he tried, the man would just get closer, sleep nearer. That broke me. Because now it wasn't just me. I wasn't crazy. It wasn't my imagination. It was real, and it was happening again. I told my mom everything that same day, all of it, no holding back. She was quiet for a long time. Then, in a low voice, she said that in the months before I moved out, she'd started feeling a strange presence in the house too. That she'd wake up in the middle of the night feeling like someone was standing in the corner of her room. That she'd dreamed about a faceless man but thought it was just her subconscious picking up on my stories. She sold the house a few months later. Said she couldn't stay there anymore. That every time she walked past the empty room she'd get chills. That she'd hear footsteps upstairs even when she was alone. The house became local gossip for a while. Kids said it was haunted. Neighbors claimed they'd seen figures in the windows after it was abandoned. Nowadays, no one lives there. It just sits, boarded up, The windows covered, the yard overgrown. The haunted house, like everyone calls it. But the worst part? Knowing he was never trapped there. The faceless man was never tied to any place. And sometimes in the middle of the night, even far away from there, I still wake up with that same suffocating feeling. That heavy energy in the room. Like someone standing right beside me, watching. Even without eyes. Creepy, right? What did you think of the story? On a scale from 0 to 10, how scary was it? Leave your rating in the comments below. Seeing something impossible inside your own home is horrifying. But what's worse is when someone else swears they saw the same thing. Like in the next story, where a ghostly child appeared right outside a window. That night started like all the others in that house where everything always seemed on the verge of collapse. The walls were always damp, peeling at the edges. The ceiling creaked even when there was no wind. And the smell, that musty, unidentifiable stench. A mix of old cigarette smoke, rotting wood, and maybe the desperation of everyone who had ever lived there too long. My mom kept saying it was just a rough patch, that we'd get out of there soon. But she'd been saying that for nearly a year, and things only seemed to get worse. The living room couch where I usually slept sagged in the middle, but it was better than sharing a room with her boyfriend. His name was Mark, a weird guy with a quiet, unsettling presence that gave me chills. He always had this distant look in his eyes, rambling about things that didn't make sense, how he felt higher forces guiding his steps. One day it was God, the next some ancient spirit living inside the trees, and sometimes he'd mutter about eyes watching him through the cracks in the wall. You never knew which version of Mark would walk out of that bedroom. That particular night, the energy in the house felt different, heavier. The air was thick, suffocating. The kitchen light flickered 3 times before dying completely, and the living room light turned sickly yellow, trembling like it was afraid to stay on. I tried to sleep, but I couldn't. I tossed and turned until exhaustion finally won, but not for long. I woke up in the middle of the night with a strange feeling. You know that certainty that someone is watching you? That's exactly what it was. My body went cold. I was lying on my side, facing the living room window. The curtain was half fallen, revealing a sliver of the night outside. And that's when I saw him. A boy, standing outside the window. He wore an old baseball uniform, like something from the 60s with vertical stripes and a crooked cap. His face was the most disturbing part. Gray, lifeless skin, and his eyes, or rather, the empty void where his eyes should have been. 2 black holes, deep and endless, like they were pulling the light into them. My heart raced. I wanted to scream, to run, to do something, but I couldn't move. I just lay there, frozen, feeling the blood turn to ice in my veins. The boy didn't move. He just stared at me with that non-existent gaze. His head tilted slightly, as if trying to figure out what I was. I don't know how long it lasted. Seconds? Minutes? All I know is I started to feel pressure on my chest, like something invisible had settled on top of me. The energy in the room shifted. It grew dense, like there was something else in there with me besides the boy outside. Then I heard footsteps behind me. Mark. He stumbled out of the bedroom, eyes wide, covered in cold sweat. He stopped in the middle of the room and stared toward the window. For a second, I thought he didn't see anything, but then he smiled, a strange, forced smile, and he started talking. "You came back," he said, his voice low, almost a whisper. My whole body tensed. I still couldn't move, but now, on top of the fear, there was confusion. Mark was talking to the boy, to that thing, and it seemed like he knew him. "I thought you'd left me," he continued, "but I knew you'd come back. I felt it. I dreamed about it." The boy didn't answer, didn't move, but Mark acted like he heard something. He nodded as if agreeing with a voice only he could hear. "I know," he murmured. "I'll do it. I promise." I blinked, once, and the boy vanished. The window now only reflected the empty street. No sign of him, no trace, nothing. Like he'd never been there. Mark stood there for a few seconds. Then, without another word, he went back to the bedroom and locked the door. I heard the key turn, and the silence in the house became heavy, oppressive. The kind of silence that doesn't comfort you, it terrifies you. It took me a while to move. When I finally could, I got up slowly and ran to the light switch. But the light wouldn't turn on. I went to the kitchen, same thing, no lights worked. I returned to the living room and sat there hugging my knees, staring at the window. The next morning, sunlight crept in through the gaps in the curtain. Mark appeared as if nothing had happened. He drank his coffee, complained about the heat, asked if I'd slept well. Like the night before had been nothing but a delusion of mine. I asked him point blank, "Who was that boy at the window last night?" He furrowed his brow, pretending to be confused. "Boy? What boy?" "The one you were talking to," I pressed. "The one in the cap, in the uniform, with empty eyes." "You dreamed it," he cut in, emotionless. "That's all. Must have been a nightmare." I stared at him, searching for a crack in the lie. But Mark was good at hiding things. He stared back with that dead-eyed look of someone who'd seen too much. That night I slept with the light on, or at least I tried, because it kept flickering like it had a mind of its own. Every time it dimmed, I expected to see that boy again standing outside the window. Only now I knew he didn't appear to just anyone. He appeared to those who were broken inside. And in that house, everyone was. Over the next few days, Mark grew even stranger, quieter. He'd spend hours locked in the bedroom, whispering to someone. Sometimes I'd hear him crying, other times laughing to himself. The negative energy in the house seemed to spread through every room, like invisible mold clinging to your skin. I started avoiding the living room at night. I taped the curtain shut, draped a blanket over it, but every now and then, even with everything covered, I'd feel him there. The boy, watching, waiting. The most disturbing part was when I found Mark's notebook under the couch. Among the scribbles and nonsensical phrases was a drawing. It was the boy, exactly as I'd seen him, same uniform, same eyeless face. And beneath the image he'd written, "He only appears when someone is ready." I never understood ready for what, but I knew it wasn't anything good. 2 weeks later, Mark lost it completely. He started screaming in the middle of the night about how they were here and how the boy wanted something in return. He said the kid had promised peace but needed a door. I don't know what that meant, but the next day my mom kicked him out. I never heard from him again, and I didn't want to. But the feeling of being watched never fully went away. Sometimes, when I'm alone and the light flickers just right, I feel that same cold creep up my spine. And I swear, for a second I see a shadow standing outside the window. Always small, always with the crooked cap, always with those hollow eyes. Chilling. If the image of a ghost boy is already disturbing, imagine facing an entity that talks back, threatens you, and drains your life energy. That's exactly what happened in the next story during a missionary trip deep in Argentina. By the third week in Rosario, we already knew that this remote neighborhood wasn't like the others. The streets were dirt roads, riddled with deep potholes, and the streetlights were so far apart that at night, the darkness was absolute. It wasn't just visual. It was a kind of blackness you could feel on your skin, like the air itself had turned thick, damp, and heavy. My companion, Elder Carter, a quiet Argentinian from Mendoza, always said he'd get a splitting headache the second we passed the rotunda near the river. I figured it was just exhaustion until the day she showed up. She hadn't made an appointment, hadn't called ahead. She just waited for us to finish a visit, then stood there watching us from the gate. She was thin, with sunken eyes, her arms covered by a thick sweater despite the sweltering heat. When we approached, she introduced herself as Veronica and asked, her voice trembling, if we could bless her home. She said she hadn't slept right in weeks, that she felt a spiritual presence watching her all the time, especially at night. She talked about noises coming from the attic, whispers under her bed, and a dark energy that took over the house after sunset. At first, we didn't know if it was paranoia or if she was going through some kind of emotional breakdown, but the way she spoke, it wasn't just fear. It was a contained desperation, like she'd told this to others before and no one had believed her. We agreed to go inside, and she looked almost relieved, as if she hadn't expected anyone to actually step foot in that place. The house was old, the wood darkened with age, smelling of mildew and something else, something metallic. The living room was clean, but the atmosphere was suffocating. A heavy silence, like the whole place was holding its breath. As Veronica showed us the bedroom where all the strange things supposedly happened, I heard a sharp crack from the hallway. It wasn't the usual sound of an old house settling. It was loud, forceful, like something had slammed into the wall. Carter shot me a look. Neither of us said a word, but we both heard it. We started the prayer right there in the middle of the room. Carter led, and I placed my hands on her head with him. Mid-blessing, the wardrobe shook, first a light vibration, then a heavy thud from inside. I froze. Veronica dropped to her knees and started crying. The moment the prayer ended, a loud noise came from the living room, like a shelf collapsing. But when we ran to check, nothing had moved. The room was exactly the same, except the air, it felt warmer, thicker, and the scent of something burning began to spread. Carter suggested we repeat the prayer, this time with more authority. I was trying not to shake, but my hands were so sweaty they slipped when I touched her forehead. We started again, and that's when the scratching began. First on the walls, then on the floor. A metallic, high-pitched sound, like something was clawing at the wood in rage. The house seemed to react to our prayer, as if something trapped inside was writhing in hatred. It wasn't until we finished the third prayer that everything stopped abruptly. A dead silence, like someone had hit mute on the world. Veronica stood motionless, staring at the floor, her eyes wide. She said that for the first time in weeks, she didn't feel that presence watching her. The house felt empty, but not in a peaceful way. It was as if whatever had been there had pulled back, for now. We left exhausted. On the way out, Carter mentioned his body ached like he'd been beaten. Mine did too. We told ourselves it was just fear, tension, fatigue. We almost believed it, at least until the following week when another woman appeared. But this one, she didn't come asking for help. She was just there, sitting on the couch in one of the homes we visited, as if she'd been waiting for us. The homeowner, an elderly man we'd known for weeks, was pale, insisting he had no idea who she was. She didn't answer our questions. She just rocked back and forth, her eyes empty, like she was in a trance, hypnotized. When we asked her name, she looked at me as if she recognized me, but she didn't speak. She just raised her hand and pointed toward the back door. The atmosphere in the house shifted instantly. The smell grew stronger, blood and damp earth. A heavy energy filled the room. No one moved. The woman stood slowly, swaying, and began walking toward the backyard. We followed, almost by instinct, and that's where everything fell apart. The middle of the overgrown brush, near a wooden structure that looked like an old chicken coop, we saw marks on the ground. It wasn't quite an altar, but it was close. There were extinguished candles, dark stains in the dirt, and feathers scattered around. Sacrifice. There was no guessing, it was obvious. Carter crossed himself and tried talking to her again. He asked if she lived there, if she remembered how she'd arrived. She whispered that she always woke up in places like this and that they heard her when she prayed. Her words were fragmented, disconnected, but they carried weight. She seemed confused, until we mentioned the name of Jesus. Everything changed. Her face hardened, her neck twisted unnaturally. Her voice, once weak, turned deep and raspy. "Don't say that name here." Carter stumbled back. I was paralyzed. The woman turned toward me and took a step. I wanted to run, but my body wouldn't obey. Then she reached out, and when her hand touched my chest, it felt like someone had ripped the air from my lungs. It wasn't physical pain. It was something else. A hollow spreading inside me, as if my body was still there, but my soul had been yanked backward. My muscles locked. I saw everything, heard everything, but I couldn't move a finger. Carter was shouting my name, but his voice sounded muffled, like it was coming from underwater. The woman stared straight into my eyes, and as strange as it sounds, I didn't see madness there. It wasn't like she'd lost her mind. It was worse. There was a cold, calculated awareness in her gaze, as if whatever was inside her knew exactly what it was doing. as if it was feeding on my presence. I don't know how much time passed. It could have been seconds or minutes, but time didn't move normally there. Carter tried to grab my arm, to shake me, and when he touched her, he froze too. But his eyes rolled back like he'd blacked out standing up. The woman turned her head slowly and let out a dry, inhuman laugh. Then she spoke again, but not in her own voice. It was a cavernous, gravelly sound, like it had come from deep underground. "You shouldn't have come here." Suddenly, she released my shirt and took 2 steps back. Her body trembled like she was having a seizure, but her eyes, they stayed fixed on mine, even as her neck bent at an unnatural angle. Her mouth began moving silently, and I heard a buzzing in my ear that grew louder until it was unbearable. The backyard light flickered. The candles, previously unlit, ignited one by one on their own. Then everything went black. When I gasped for air, I collapsed to my knees. The buzzing was gone and the woman was nowhere to be seen. Carter lay unconscious on the ground. I tried to stand, but my legs wouldn't respond. I stayed there, face pressed into the dirt, staring at the strange symbol drawn on the ground in some dark substance, maybe blood. I didn't want to confirm. The scent of sulfur and iron still hung heavy in the air. It took us a while to drag ourselves out of that backyard. When we finally did, the homeowner was locked in his bedroom, sobbing. He said the woman had vanished the moment the light returned. He wouldn't even open the door to check on us. We grabbed our things and left in silence. The only thing Carter said on the way out was, "She looked straight through me." And I knew exactly what he meant. Back at our place, we didn't tell anyone else in the mission about what had happened. We didn't even eat. We lay in bed, fully clothed, staring at the ceiling, waiting for sleep. But it never came. The atmosphere had shifted, and not just in that man's house. It was like something had latched onto us. A constant feeling of being watched. And it wasn't paranoia. There were noises that hadn't been there before. A whisper brushing past your ear, then vanishing when you turned. Light touches on the bed, the bathroom mirror fogging up from the inside, even with the shower cold. The next day we went to the mission office. We told the president everything without interruption. When we finished, he sat in silence for a long time. Then he pulled out a map of the city, drew a red circle around that block, and wrote beside it, "Restricted Zone." He said that from that day forward no missionary was to enter that area. For spiritual safety, we never went back. And honestly, we didn't even go near those streets. Even on the bus, windows shut tight, we could feel when we were getting close. The air changed. Our chests tightened. It was like that spiritual presence was still there, waiting. And sometimes when I close my eyes, I still see her face. But not the way she looked when she arrived. I see the way she looked at me after. Like she'd known my name before I ever opened my mouth. Like she had been waiting for me, not the other way around. And the strangest thing? I never told anyone about this, not even Carter. But that night, just before I fell asleep, I swear I heard a voice right next to my ear. It said, "Now you know me." Unreal, right? Coming face to face with dark forces leaves scars that never fade. But sometimes evil hides in the smallest, most subtle details. Like in the next story, where a simple glance inside a psychiatric hospital revealed something no one could explain. But before we continue, if you've made it this far, that means you're enjoying the stories. So hit that like button to let YouTube know you love this kind of content and don't miss any more horror tales. It was a strange kind of cold that morning. Not just the weather outside. It was the kind of cold that seemed to come from within, you know? Like your body was trying to warn you that something was off. I'd been there for about 2 weeks by then, checked into St. Charles Behavioral Hospital, a psychiatric facility tucked away in the Colorado mountains. Remote, surrounded by pines and peaks. Too quiet. My chart said severe depression with dissociative episodes. I'd had some rough breakdowns, and my doctor thought I needed a safe place to stabilize. At first I fought it, but eventually I gave in. The environment was calm, the nurses were kind, and the food, well, it was hospital food, but that place had a different kind of energy. I'm not talking about movie ghosts, just this constant feeling of being watched. Like there was always someone or something staring at you the second you turned your back. What really got to me, though, was the silence between patients. Most of them moved like zombies, heads down, barely speaking. When they did talk, it was in hushed murmurs like they were afraid of being overheard. That's where I met Marcus. He showed up in my second group therapy session, held in a room with massive windows overlooking a dry, lifeless garden. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark skin and intense brown eyes that seemed to pull your attention. He spoke with a calm, almost detached tone, always with a sharp, ironic remark ready. He seemed out of place, like he was operating on a different frequency, but still connected enough to make you laugh. Marcus became my anchor in that place. We'd pass the time trading dumb jokes, talking about our lives before the hospital, the foods we missed, the things we'd do once we got out. We never dug too deep into why he was there. He'd just say he needed to quiet some voices. I respected that. Everyone had their demons. The first weird thing happened on some random afternoon. The common room was nearly empty. Marcus was sitting on the couch near the TV, staring at the blank screen, not blinking. I watched him for a few seconds, trying to figure out if he was meditating or just sleeping with his eyes open. When I got closer, he turned his head slowly, like he was snapping out of a trance. And that's when, for just a split second, too fast to be sure, I saw his eyes. Different. Not brown, not human, yellow, but not just any yellow. It was bright, almost fluorescent, like a headlight cutting through fog. His pupils were thin, vertical, like a reptile's. I blinked, and his eyes were back to their usual dark brown. He smirked and said I looked like hell, and we went on with the day like nothing happened. But I couldn't shake it. I told myself it was just my imagination, some side effect of the meds. Blurry vision, maybe. But it wasn't just that. For a second, it was like he wasn't him. Things got worse the next week. It was group therapy day. Everyone was gathered in a circle, some in chairs, others on cushions. Dr. Klein, the therapist, was leading a breathing exercise. Marcus was next to me, eyes closed, hands resting on his knees. Everything was fine until he started shaking. At first it was subtle, like a shiver. Then his whole body began to tremble, like an electric current was running through him. No one else seemed to notice, just me. The others kept breathing deeply, eyes shut, completely oblivious. So did Dr. Klein. That's when he turned his face toward me, and his eyes had changed again. The same bright yellow. An unnatural glow, almost pulsing. It was like something else had taken over him. And it was looking right at me. I froze. I couldn't speak, couldn't scream. I could only stare into those eyes, like I was standing at the edge of an abyss. The trembling stopped abruptly. He lowered his head, and when he looked up again, his eyes were back to normal. He gave me a faint, almost sad smile. The session ended. No one said a word, like I was the only one who'd seen it. Afterward, I tried to ask if he was okay, but he shut it down with, "I'm fine, just a rough moment." That bothered me, because it wasn't just a rough moment. A dark energy had filled the room, the kind that makes the hairs on your arms stand up and your heart race. I started avoiding Marcus after that. Tried to keep my distance, but he always found a way to get close. A casual, "Hey, you good?" or a funny comment in the cafeteria. But now, beneath his easygoing tone, I felt something else. A weight. One night I woke up in the middle of the night. My room was freezing, and I swear I heard a whisper from the hallway. I got up, pressed my ear to the door. Nothing, but when I turned around, he was there. Marcus, standing in the corner of my room watching me, and his eyes yellow again. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. My body wouldn't move. I just stood there, frozen, as he slowly stepped closer. But before he reached the bed, he stopped, his head tilted slightly, like he was listening to something I couldn't hear. Then he just vanished. Not like someone walking out the door. He literally disappeared from sight. The room fell silent again. I cried myself to sleep, wondering if I was losing my mind or if something terrible had followed him into that place. The next day, I casually asked a nurse if Marcus was still a patient. He checked his clipboard and said, "Marcus? No one by that name here?" I thought he was messing with me. I went to Dr. Klein and she suggested it might be a side effect of my meds or my own trauma projecting onto someone else. I was in shock because it had all felt so real. The conversations, the laughs, the eyes, the shaking. No one else remembered him. I started doubting myself. Had I made Marcus up? Was he just a manifestation of my mind trying to show me something I didn't want to see? Or had I actually seen something I wasn't supposed to? I stayed 2 more weeks before I was discharged. Dr. Klein thought I'd made progress. I just wanted out. Years have passed since then. I've tried to move on, changed cities, went to therapy, switched jobs, but I've never been the same. Every now and then, in really quiet places, I still feel that cold inside me, that sense of being watched. And sometimes, in the reflection of a window, I see yellow eyes staring back. Not for long. Just enough to remind me that in that hospital, I witnessed something not of this world. Or maybe something that lives inside us, waiting for a crack to show itself. That was terrifying. What did you think of this one? How would you rate it from 0 to 10? Share your thoughts in the comments. The basement door was never supposed to be open. It was one of those unspoken rules of the house, like not touching the cracked crucifix hanging in the hallway or staring at the cat for too long. But that night, I saw the doorknob turn on its own. And when I stepped down the first 3 stairs, whatever grabbed my ankles felt more solid than any shadow. It all started with a favor. Jen and Gary Mitchell, my parents' neighbors for as long as I could remember, decided to take in Jen's sister's son for a while. His mom was troubled, in and out of rehab, and the boy, Ethan, was only 6. But there was something off about him, something hard to put into words. He never cried, never laughed, never asked questions. He just watched, silent all the time with those unblinking, fixed eyes. At first I thought it was trauma, but in that house nothing was ever that simple. The Mitchells' place had a reputation in the neighborhood. Stories of bad energy, doors slamming on their own, furniture moving in the middle of the night. A cop once refused to go inside after responding to a call about fighting noises coming from the house. He said he saw the TV fall off the shelf by itself and felt something breathe hard into his ear, even though he was alone in the room. After that, no one from the precinct wanted to answer calls from that address. But Jen wasn't the type to believe in any of that. And Gary? Well, he just seemed too tired to care about anything. The first week was relatively normal. Ethan stayed quiet, wandering the house with the cat, Whiskers, trailing behind him. It was almost funny, like the two of them understood each other without words. Until one day, while Jen was giving him a bath, she heard a loud noise, and the bathroom door slammed shut. When she tried to open it, she couldn't. She said the lock felt jammed, like someone was holding it from the other side. By the time she got in, Ethan was submerged in the tub, his arms stretched out as if something was holding him under. She swore she saw bruises on his shoulders, like fingers digging into his skin. But seconds later, they were gone. That's when things started to escalate. The TV fell twice in one day. The microwave turned on by itself in the middle of the night. Cabinet doors flew open, sending dishes crashing to the floor. And the cat started talking, not meowing, speaking, full sentences. The first time I heard it, I thought I was losing my mind. I was in the kitchen getting a glass of water when Whiskers walked in, sat beside me, and said in the driest voice imaginable, "He's not just a child anymore." I froze. I just stared at the cat, waiting for my brain to make sense of the sound. But he repeated it, looking straight into my eyes. There's something inside him. I bolted, ran out of the house, called Gary, and told him something was seriously wrong. He laughed, thought it was a joke, but Jen didn't find it funny at all. The next day, she pulled me aside and confessed she hadn't slept in days. She said she felt a constant presence in the house, like someone was watching her every move. And the worst part, she'd started to suspect their adopted daughter, Marcy, might be involved. Marcy had always been different. Even as a little kid, she could move objects with her eyes. One day when she was 7, she made her dad's phone levitate across the room, spin in the air, and smash against the wall. Doctors called it a neurological disorder, but I knew it was more than that. She talked to things no one else could see. She drew people with stitched-up eyes, shadow creatures with horns and mouths where their eyes should be. That week, Ethan was found in the basement, unconscious. Gary had gone to check out a strange noise coming from down there and found the door open. When he went downstairs, he found the boy sprawled on the concrete floor, his eyes rolled back, his body covered in black dust. There were scratch marks on his arms, like thin claws had dragged across his skin. Even unconscious, he kept repeating, "She said it's my turn, my turn, my turn." No one knew who she was, until the shadow appeared. It was a Tuesday, just before midnight. We were all in the living room because Jen had insisted on calling a prayer group. She'd lost control of the situation and would take any help she could get. In the middle of the prayer, the lamp exploded. The lights flickered. And the cat started laughing. Yes, laughing like a kid mimicking an adult. Then he said, "You're already in her house, there's no way out." That's when the shadow came down the stairs. It didn't walk, it glided. It had a humanoid shape, but with a long, twisted neck. Its eyes were 2 yellow dots, fixed on Marcy. She tried to scream, but her voice failed. Then the couch moved on its own, flying toward the wall, as if some force was trying to push us away from her. After that, they called the Warrens. Yes, those Warrens, Ed and Lorraine. They were older by then, tired, but they still took on extreme cases. They spent an entire night in the house, not saying much. They just drew symbols on the doors, placed holy water in the corners, and lit incense in the basement. The next day, Lorraine pulled us aside and said the house wasn't just haunted. It was a gateway, a kind of passage to a lower dimension. The entity wasn't there by accident. It was after Ethan, and for some reason his connection to Marcy was making its presence stronger. Their advice? Take Ethan away, now, and never let him come back. But it wasn't that simple. His birth mother died a week later, under strange circumstances. Ethan ended up back with the Mitchells, and the activity continued. Over the years, he developed disturbing behaviors, sleeping with his eyes open, speaking in unknown languages during the night, having violent outbursts when he heard prayers. It wasn't until he turned 26 that he finally agreed to an exorcism. I was there, and it was the most terrifying thing I've ever witnessed. They strapped Ethan to a bed in an isolated church. The priest, a tall, calm man, began the prayers in Latin, and Ethan's body, it twisted like it was made of rubber. His skin turned red, then blisters formed, and when they splashed holy water on him, it sizzled and evaporated on contact. The smell was like burning flesh. The screams, they weren't human, deep, guttural, like multiple voices speaking at once. And the worst part? Midway through, whiskers appeared at the church window, years later, even though he'd been given away and disappeared. He just stared, his eyes glowing in the dark. When it was over, Ethan passed out. He slept for 2 straight days. When he woke up, he cried for the first time. He said he remembered everything, being trapped in a dark place, hearing voices say he was the chosen one, feeling a constant spiritual presence inside him, like his soul was split with something else. These days, he lives far away, in a small town, trying to start over. But to this day, he avoids mirrors. He says sometimes he sees the reflection of someone who isn't him, with yellow eyes. And the Mitchell's basement, it was sealed, with concrete and salt. But sometimes when I walk past the house, I still hear the cat meowing. Creepy stuff, huh? If you stayed with me until the end, comment the phrase "possessed child," so I'll know you made it all the way. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next stories. I'm always bringing more accounts that really get under your skin. If you liked it, drop a like. That's what keeps this channel alive and tells me it's worth continuing. And of course, there's another video right here with more terrifying stories. Click it and keep watching with me.